Okay, good to have you on the show this morning, Dan. You've been talking a lot about the fuel in New Zealand at Parliament this week.
It's fuel has been the main
Yeah,
topic, Tarboy.
yeah,
I mean, the government is looking increasingly unprepared as to what's lying ahead, um, and it feels as if Luxon's not been straight with New Zealanders. He still hasn't explained what happens
hmm,
if shortages really begin to bite. So petrol right now, we're at 56 days,
hmm,
and that's down from 59. Our diesel is at 45 days, and
yeah,
that's down from 49.
hmm,
And then our jet fuel was creeping down too. That's at around 47 days, down from 50. Now, Luxon says that fuel stocks are fine,
hmm,
um, but when dealing with the fuel crisis, we need to be focused in on what happens if this gets worse. They should be pulling out all the stops to making sure, or working every angle possible to make sure there's as much certainty around fuel supplies, particularly for our rural communities. And they also need to be moving much faster to explain what will happen
yeah,
if or when a fuel shortage actually happens. And their current approach, in our view, is far too complacent.
yeah,
So we just need to make sure that this maintains, focus
yeah,
front and centre of
yeah,
all our discussions, because we would be much better prepared
right.
if National hadn't scrapped Labor's proposal to build an additional 70 million litres
Hmm,
of diesel storage.
hmm,
And that we're really feeling that now, Tarboy.
right. So where we are at the moment, Dan, are we safe or are we worried about what the stock we have in New Zealand?
I mean, the stock that we have in New Zealand, yes, that's fine. But what happens over the horizon?
Right,
What
right,
happens
yeah,
if tankers start getting turned around
hmm,
or orders get cancelled? And we
right.
need to have a plan for that.
Hmm. What's the biggest concern for us here in New Zealand as the war is continuing on? Because I mean, Donald Trump said it's only 2 weeks, and then next moment it's 5 weeks. But till now, we're not sure when the war is going to finish.
Yeah, so we're at the end of a supply chain, a lot like the islands in the Pacific. We tend to be a thoroughfare for main shipping lanes.
Right,
So, if even if the war stops tomorrow, we're still going to face the consequences of
right,
that for weeks and into the months towards the end of the year.
mm,
And that's not just fuel; it's everything that kind of hangs off fuel. So,
right,
like fertilizer, plastics that we use for plumbing,
mm,
gas fitting products, other building products. So this is not going to solve itself overnight. So we need a comprehensive plan
right.
and be upfront with New Zealanders about how we're going to deal with this.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Dan. So, how do you see the connection between rural communities and small business, and where do you think the biggest opportunities lie?
So right now, people's spending habits are changing
Mm,
just because of the cost of living. And getting out around New Zealand over the recess, I've
yeah.
found that um, businesses are finding it hard. People just aren't coming into the shops.
Mm,
Um, Small businesses can't absorb costs like a lot of larger businesses. So that's one constraint. But then, in terms of opportunity, small businesses are resilient, and they're finding workarounds to get out and connect with their customers. They are finding opportunities to sell products that might not have been popular 3 months ago, and now
mm,
now they are. And so that's fantastic. And there is a lot of energy to try and
right.
maneuver around this crisis,
Mm-mm.
which is fantastic.
Okay. Okay, Dan, what support do you believe small businesses need to become more resilient, whether to economic shocks, natural disasters, or supply chain disruptions?
So when something does happen, and we saw the cyclone
Yeah.
earlier last week. Now, fortunately, it wasn't as bad as what everyone thought. But if it was, we need the ability for the government to get money out the door to
Yeah.
support these businesses
Right.
quickly.
Yeah.
If we don't have that, then you get a period where there's uncertainty
Right.
and unnecessary angst amongst small businesses.
Okay, Dan, how important is digital capability for small businesses today, and what steps do you think could help more small operators modernize?
Yeah, so we discussed this in our last conversation,
Yeah,
Tabo,
yeah,
about the amount of opportunity there is for young people to take on these businesses, and they're digital natives, so they can run with a lot of technology that some of us more senior people aren't necessarily comfortable with.
mm,
Recently, when I was up in the Manawa too, one thing that the business chamber said there that we could really kind of make a huge impact
right,
is around paywave fees. So, when you go into a shop, you pull out your EFTPOS card and you tap instead of swiping.
mm,
Now, right now, that paywave fee, the retailer has to absorb that cost.
right,
So if we were to somehow be able to change legislation so the banks who already make record profits were able to absorb that cost, it would save a lot of these retailers thousands of dollars a year. And then it
mm,
would also be good for the consumer as well,
mm,
because it's not, an additional kind of
right,
ticket clipping exercise.
yeah.
So that's one thing that I've been hearing back loud and clear across the country.
Okay, Dan, I can see that access to capital is a recurring issue for small businesses. What ideas are you exploring to help small businesses grow and invest?
Yeah, so right now, so if you wanted a loan from the bank as an
Yeah,
individual,
right,
all you need to provide is, record of income, 3 months pay slips
hmm,
essentially.
right,
Small businesses find that a lot harder. They have to prove, their history of income a lot more.
right,
Sometimes it can be over a period of years. So particularly for sole traders, making it easier in terms of those
right.
records would be a lot easier to access capital, in my view. So
Mm,
that's something that we're looking at right now with our policy development to
yeah,
see if we can reduce that lead time
yeah,
and that length of record
right.
that small businesses need.
Okay. How do you see small businesses playing a role in regional economic development, especially in places like South Auckland and rural areas?
Yeah, so small businesses in terms of those rural areas.
Yeah,
I was talking to the economic development group in the Marlborough District Council
right.
yesterday,
Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
and they asked me, what is a small business?
Mm,
And I said, well, my definition is the MB definition, which is less
right.
than 20 people.
Mm,
It's got nothing to do with cash flow or anything like that. It's
right.
determined by the amount of people. And they said, well, that's pretty much Marlborough. And I'd say that's pretty much South Auckland as well. So the opportunities in terms of being able to employ people, take on additional like apprentices to do vocational training, link in with industry training organisations. Small businesses are very agile in that space.
Mm,
So I see them as a means to really get our young people into
yeah,
work.
yeah.
And because that workforce is so small, they can teach them those good habits, that you need to be an employee, showing up on time,
Mm,
being part of the team. And I think our small businesses,
yeah,
particularly in our rural areas
yeah.
and our and South Auckland and things like that, they can
Right.
they can learn from that next generation of
Mm.
workers or those more senior workers.
Excellent, Dan. Okay, my last question. What message do you want rural New Zealanders and small business owners to hear from you right now?
Right now, our top line thing that's front of mind right now is a more affordable New Zealand,
Right.
and that leads into fuel. It's making sure food is more affordable, particularly and also incomes as well, raising those incomes so people have choices about what they buy,
Right.
and they can buy better quality products, better food, and afford the essentials.
Excellent. Well, Dan Rosewarne, Labour's spokesperson for rural communities and small business, thank you so much for your time. Whawhaftai tele lava. Mo nia le aso, Dan?
Hello.
Yeah, hello, whawhaftai lava. O le suga Dan Rosewarne. Ma le tata noa kada ne foi Taeao fau. Le tautua mo le rei Samoa for Labour. E wa toru a mo.